Hello and welcome everyone. You are watching the RELO Andy's webinar that's originally broadcast in August 2021. I'm so glad you're here. I am Rachel Martin. I'm an English language specialist and I get to join you almost every month for these webinars. So in case you just found us by accident, you wandered in for the first time, welcome, welcome. I want to encourage you to like, follow, and favorite the RELO Andy's Facebook page. That's where you can find the links to these webinars and many other training opportunities and resources. Go ahead and mark your calendar right now because the next webinar is going to be in September on the 16th. All right, so I would love to hear where you are joining us from. So if you are watching live, go ahead and comment in the chat. I can see you right over here. And even if you're watching this later on replay, we come back. I look through the chat. Sometimes we get an idea of what's going on there. So hello to Danny. Hello to Gabby from Tumbes. Let's see. We have Zakir joining us from Pakistan and Malena from Trujillo. Welcome, everyone. It is so good to have you here. So, as you know, we're talking about flipped classrooms this month. But before we get to that, there's something else I'm so excited to get to share with you. If you were following along with some of the things we were doing last fall, over 3,000 teachers got together online. These were teachers from 51 different countries, all over South America, but all over the world. And they came together to learn, to connect, and to share at a conference that RELO Andy's hosted, which was called Re-Evolution. So since last October, Re-Evolution has existed here, as you can see, as a YouTube channel. So all of our conferences are up there. But now I'm so happy I get to share this with you today. October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of this year, coming up in, what is that, month and a half? We're doing it again. I am happy to announce Re-Evolution 2.0 Beyond the Screen, and you can sign up and get your tickets now. So please head over to the website, which is reevolutionelt.com. It's completely free to attend, but you do need to get a ticket. So mark your calendar, and I will see you in October. All right, so let's jump into today's topic. As I said, we are talking about flipped classrooms. So flipped classrooms and homework, they go together. Of course, you have to have homework to do a flipped classroom. So let me start by asking, what is a flipped class? And now anytime you see this logo right here with the sticky notes and the question mark, that means I would like to hear your responses in the chat. So like I said, if you are watching live, please put them in the chat and maybe I can highlight a few of your answers. What is a flipped class? We can put your ideas on screen. Or if you're watching later, you can still answer. We come back and look. So I asked some of the teachers I worked with, I sent this out on my WhatsApp because, you know, how do you reach all your teacher friends? You usually WhatsApp them. And I made a word cloud out of some of the answers I received. So what is a flipped class? This is what some of my colleagues were thinking about. And let's see some of the keywords, you know, on a word cloud, the word is bigger if a lot of people say it. So we have videos, homework. People are talking about what you do in class. I think higher probably went with higher order, hybrid, homework, learning. Okay, so I see some answers here. What is a flipped class? Thank you, Karima, for that. And looks like Matilde says an inverted class. That's kind of fun. You know, if we want to take flipped and use a synonym for that, we can invert it. Exactly. All right, and I want to give some more shout outs here. Let's see, we have Yolanda from Bolivia. We have Pilar from Peru, Fabiola from Lima. Okay, and I know there's so many more people. I don't want to ignore anyone over here on the chat. So learning process that's inverted, exactly. Looks like we have another one here about it's a great opportunity for students to become independent. Fantastic. They practice in class with their peers and teachers. That's some of our main ideas today. Fantastic. All right. So one of the first things that I want to mention is that a flipped class does not just equal video homework. Because sometimes when I've asked this question, the only answer I get is, well, the students watch videos for their homework. It goes a little bit more than that. And specifically, I want to talk about 3 things that you flip when you flip a class. So first, you flip the relationship between homework and classwork. You're flipping the sequence. And I think that's the thing that comes to mind first. Hi, Maria from Ecuador. Great to have you here. So first thing that comes to mind when you flip a class is that you're flipping the sequence. You're reordering something. However, you also get to flip the level of work in class. And you also, to some extent, you flip the relationship with the teacher. You go from being maybe the instructor to being the guide. And so I want to go through all 3 of these things that you flip when you flip a class. All right. So first up, we said you flip the relationship or the sequence between homework and classwork. So let's think about a class here, okay? We have a to-do list, kind of a fictional one here. What do you do first? First, you learn a new skill. Then you practice the skill in a very controlled way. Then maybe you practice the skill in a freer way. Then you have homework about the skill. And then you start a new skill. So, we go from more controlled, very simple exercises to more complicated exercises. And this is a very natural progression to lessons. I mean, I think that's when I'm training teachers how to teach, I often recommend this. But what that means is that in a traditional classroom model, you learn the new skill in class and then you have homework about it later. So let's think about what that does. In a traditional classroom model, you have your direct instruction in a group, and then you have your individual practice on your own. Okay, so if I'm going to flip this around to be flipped, in a flipped classroom model, you have your direct instruction individually, and then you practice when you come together in a group. You practice when you can be supported by your peers and supported by the teacher. So oftentimes when we talk about this individual direct instruction, rather than coming to class and listening and learning there, if you're doing it at home, oftentimes people think about videos. And this is where that connection comes. They are a great way to share information with your class, but they're not the only way. So let me put this question into the chat here. What else could be used for direct instruction besides videos? If you need your students to learn a new skill, a new concept, maybe the new vocabulary or the new target language, and you need them to learn it for the first time at home rather than in class, what else can you use besides video? I've got the sticky note here. So if you are watching from home, please put it in the chat. And I'm going to share with you some of my ideas as well, but I want to highlight some of yours. So in addition to infographics in addition to videos, you can have infographics, textbooks. Oh, Matilde, thank you for sharing podcasts. Oh, I don't have that one on my list. I should definitely have that one on my list. Interactive materials, exactly, Karina, including online materials. There are messages by cell, presenting a video, exactly. I mean, that can be a video that you made as a teacher that you found that suits it. But I really want to emphasize that a flipped classroom does not require video. Videos are great. I love them. I make a lot of them. But if your students don't have the data for it, if they don't have the connection strength for it, you can use some of these lower bandwidth or lower data examples. You can record an audio set of instructions. You can send them an infographic. Oftentimes an infographic is a great way for students to go back and reference, what was I supposed to do? What were those steps? Oh, I like what I'm seeing here in the chat. Zakir is saying that you can provide students with online links or courses related to their studies. Putting links together can be such an effective form of individual direct instruction. And, let's think about that. That allows students to pace on their own. They can go through it on their own time. But we don't want to ignore workbooks or textbooks. If they have like a little mini grammar lesson or they are presenting a new concept for the first time, if the students are doing that first at home rather than in class, that can be a flipped classroom as well. And let's hit this down here. We have interactive worksheets too. Exactly. So you get the idea that instruction at home does not have to be in the form of videos, even though it frequently is. We have a whole menu here of other things that you can do. All right, so that was our first point here. So when we flip a class, we flip the relationship between the homework and the classwork. Now you are learning it first at home and practicing with a group. That's the opposite of what happens in a more traditional model. Let's jump into the second characteristic, the second thing you flip when you flip a class. So this one might not be obvious at first, but you often can flip the level of work or the complexity of work that is done during the class session. Think about this one. So coming back to our list here, if you practice a new skill, simple, practice a new skill, more complex, oftentimes, we're doing these easier things when we're in class, and then we're doing the more complex ones at home. You're really applying it at home. This is in the traditional model. Or if we want to visit our good friend, our old friend, Bloom's pyramid here, these earlier levels are what you're often doing when you first learn a skill. You might be doing something at the remember, understand, or apply level, and that's appropriate. You need to start with those foundations. However, as a student becomes more proficient after they've got a little bit of practice, then they move up here to the higher levels of the pyramid. We're all familiar with these, I'm sure, that create, evaluate, analyze. You do this once you've learned the skill, once you've practiced it a few times. Well, in a flipped classroom, you really want to have the higher order skills happen in class. So instead of assigning students to do these higher level skills at home, where maybe they'll get confused and they can't really ask for help or guidance because they're on their own as an individual, in a flipped classroom, they do these higher skills when they're together in groups, or with the teacher, there to provide support. It's kind of a way to scaffold these higher level skills when you think about it. So to make it really clear here again, our lower order practice, this isn't a traditional classroom model. So this is to contrast it before we flip it around. In a traditional classroom model, your lower order practice happens in class and your higher order practice happens at home. However, we're flipping around those locations. So in a flipped classroom, the lower order practice happens at home because they get started on the work at home, which means when they come to class, they're ready for the higher order practice when they're there in class. Okay, look at this. We are moving right through our presentation today. So far, we've talked about the sequence, which is the most obvious thing about a flipped classroom. Then we talked about how flipping a classroom lets you get to those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy while you're in class. And this is something I was actually thinking about this. I was doing a workshop last week and we were talking about these sequences for classes, how, you want to start with more controlled, freer, freest, how that's ideal. But the students were telling me, the teachers were telling me that they run out of time for all of them. And those higher level, freer assignments, they can't get to in class. Well, if you flip it around, the students have already done the easier ones on their own at home. And when they come to class, you hopefully have time for those more communicative tasks. Okay, so the last thing that you flip when you flip a classroom is you flip the relationship with the teacher. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of terms. They rhyme. They're really easy to remember. So we say sage on the stage or guide on the side. What do I mean by sage on the stage? It sounds kind of funny, but a sage, is a very wise person. So we might refer to this as a traditional model of learning. I think many of our students still expect that. They come to class and they want to listen to the teacher who has all the answers. I'm not sure that ever worked really well in face-to-face presential classes, but it really is not working fantastic in distance learning because the teachers need to take more, the students need to take more autonomy when they are in their own home rather than in the classroom. So we have this alternative to sage on the stage, and that is guide on the side. So we say it like that to remind ourselves that teachers become a guide. You set up these learning experiences or you give the students the resources to complete their direct instruction on their own time individually. And you're just there to guide them, to point them back to the resources, to answer questions in those in-class sessions, which now hopefully you're answering, more complex questions. Students also really benefit from this because if they know that they have access to the lecture, if they know they have access to the instructions, over time, hopefully we can help them remember to go back to those. So every single question does not need to come to the teacher. They can really be empowered to find those answers themselves. And we do that by guiding. We come alongside our students. So it's kind of an old saying, but it's worth repeating. Sage on the stage versus guide on the side. All right. Oh, yes. Thank you. Let's see. They can even figure out the rules with lower level tasks. Exactly. I think our students are so capable and they're often more capable than they even realize or that they believe about themselves. Thanks for that comment, Edison. So I want to move into kind of the second part of our webinar here. And I want to talk about homework because you need homework in order for a flipped classroom to exist. I mean, that part is obvious. If you are sending the students home or if you're sending them on their own to do this direct instruction individually, that by definition is not happening in the classroom. So homework, I mean, this is a big topic right now during remote teaching and distance learning. I think a lot of the students look like this fellow here. They've had enough of it. So let me ask you, what do you think? I would like to see in the chat here, and you could just answer with A, B, C, or D to make it easy so you don't have to type everything out. But do you think students have too much homework? Too much volume of homework is assigned to them and they don't do it? Or do you think students are doing too much homework? Too much homework is assigned to them, but they're completing it. They're struggling along. Do you think C, students have about the right amount of homework? Or do you think D, students have too little homework? Okay, I want to see some of these come in here in the chat. So like I said, you can just write A, B, C, or D. And if you're watching this later, I encourage you to ask this question or think of this question for yourself. And then I'm curious, what would your students answer? And before you say, of course, my students are going to say they have too much homework, I'm aware of at least one recent survey that they surveyed both teachers and students who were using the same curriculum. And in that survey, the teachers said there was too much work for the students. The students are not able to complete this in a week. It's been overwhelming. We should cut this down. And from the same sample, the students replied, we don't have enough practice. The materials are insufficient. So that's kind of an interesting mismatch if you think about it. We might expect those ideas to be closer, or maybe we would expect that the students say it's too much and the teachers say it's too little. I would ask them and find a way for your students to answer anonymously, maybe. Throw it in a Mentimeter or a Google form where they don't have to put their name. I'm looking here at the chat. Let's see. What do I have? I have a pretty good mix. Let's see. A, C, A, C, A or B, BBA. Yeah, look at this. There's a pretty good mix. I see predominantly a lot of A's over here, which would be students have too much homework and they don't do it. But I also see quite a few people answering with B. The students have too much homework, but they're struggling through. Or some people are saying students have the right amount of homework. What I do not see, and I'm looking, I'm scrolling. I might have missed it, but I don't see a single person in the chat right now who answered students have too little homework. Again, I refer you back to at least one survey. There was a mismatch where the students wanted more. Ask your students what they think. But keeping this in mind that students probably have enough homework from our perspective at least, or they have too much homework. Here are some guiding principles, 3 ideas that we need to keep in mind as we consider flipping a class or as we work with flipped classes online. How much time they spend on homework has to be reconsidered. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. We can't make assumptions about homework. There do have to be live sessions. So a flipped classroom model must have live sessions and it must also have homework. There is such a thing called a flipped in live, but that's kind of a slightly different strategy that we're not going to talk about today. For our purposes, we're going to talk about in distance learning, you have to have both a live session, so, a Zoom call, a Google Meets, something like that, and you also have to have homework. And maybe most importantly, students and parents have to understand the sequence and how they're being graded. So this is a pretty big shift in some ways, especially that sequencing. Our students are used to, here's what you do, here's what you learn, now go practice. Learn in class, go practice. Learn in class, go practice. When we turn that around, they have to reorient their approach to learning. It's almost pre-work. It isn't homework practice, it's pre-work or preparation. And I think that takes a different mentality. But let's talk about this, how time on homework must be reconsidered. So let's compare our traditional class and our flipped class here. So if we have 45 minutes in class and 20 minutes in homework, does that mean I can just, switch these around? No, I'm going to say no, because you obviously aren't going to get to reduce your class time. You're still going to have 40 minutes in class. Your students probably won't like it, and it wouldn't be effective or fair given how many other classes they're taking right now, how many other responsibilities they have. Just because you flipped your class doesn't mean you're going to increase your homework suddenly to be 45 minutes. And what you have to know here is you have to know that not everything from the traditional class period is going to fit into homework. You're not just going to take the lesson plan. This is everything I would have taught on Wednesday, so now it's your homework to do on Tuesday. It doesn't work that way. I like this comment here. Matilda's saying we have to decide the purpose of homework. And really, I'm going to agree with that completely and say we have to be selective. So when you do a flipped class and you are maintaining this awareness of how much homework am I giving them, you don't want to overload our students. That's not, ethical, and it's not going to lead to it getting done. How can we make those 20 minutes as productive as possible? And how can we make those 20 minutes teach them the basics, let them reach that kind of introductory level of practice? Thinking back to Bloom's taxonomy, that pyramid, whatever they're doing at home should set them up for those higher level skills as they come into class. We have a nice comment here about to prioritize the types of tasks students need most, of course. And I am always a fan of options. So that's actually a good point there. Having a flipped classroom does not mean you take away all the options in homework. Maybe everyone does need to watch the same video, or maybe there's more than one way they can gather that information. Or if you can't provide too many options in the homework because they need to cover this limited amount of material, make sure you're putting options into the classwork. So when they come and they apply it with those higher level activities, they can make some choices. Throw a choice board in there, give them an either or. I mean, students love choices. We all love choices. So that I think will even motivate them to be in class and to be ready for class, because they need to do that homework, that preparation, so that they're ready to do something that they might find fun or engaging when they get to class. But be selective. Coming back to those other two, we've kind of mentioned these already, about just to reinforce there must be live sessions. If you are teaching entirely by WhatsApp, if you are not able to get your students together in real time, you can still learn a lot from flipped classrooms, because you can really think about the sequencing. You can, try and pay attention to where they have their references to make sure students are very empowered to go and do that direct instruction, but you're not able to replicate that supported practice all the time. I do know there are some creative approaches. I have a friend who does office hours, or like a class hour on WhatsApp, where they are available at a set time. I mean, they answer questions all the time, but there's a set time in the week that they want the students to get on WhatsApp and interact with them. That's one approach. I know you have many creative approaches there. And just communicating, because it will be different for students to get used to the sequence. It isn't practice that you can do after the fact. It's what you need to be successful when you show up for class. And I do love this here. Matilde just said that tutoring is an important element in a flipped classroom. I think that goes back, to our guide on the side approach. This year, and I mean, a lot of the times as teachers, we are tutors, we are guides, we are presenters of information. But in a flipped classroom, we're just more a facilitator of information. We are not the one that needs to give them that direct instruction. We just need to give them the resource and the skills and the know-how to do it. And then they do the direct instruction and we facilitate the practice. So I want to open it up to questions now. So if you are watching live, please put any questions you might have about flipped classrooms here in the chat, and we'll try to answer a few of them. I did put this question up on the RELO Andy's Facebook page a couple of days ago. And so I just picked some of the questions that I received there, and let's take a look at these while I'm checking the chat and hoping to get some live questions here as well. So there's a question. Is autonomy the biggest challenge for a flipped classroom? Thanks for the answer. I'm not sure if I would say the biggest challenge, because there can be, many challenges, from time management to technology. But as students, I think students learn autonomy, and they have to learn some autonomy to be successful in a flipped classroom. So, I mean, you don't throw them to the wolves, but maybe you ease them into it. You tell them, before you come to class, you need to have listened to this, or you need to have read this, watch this video before you come. And, maybe ease them into that before you flip completely. We have evaluation or assessments. Well, evaluation or assessments are always going to be part of our learning cycle. And I think even summative evaluations or assessments can feed back into how we teach as a teacher, or the student should leave with understanding of their own abilities. Most evaluations or assessments already take place in a class period. I mean, sometimes there are take-home exams, or there are projects that they work on at home, but a good deal of the time, evaluation or assessment is happening in the live time. So it's probably still going to happen there, because it wouldn't fall under the direct instruction. You don't really do it beforehand. Oh, we have a new question coming here. Do you have any favorite programs or apps that you use to create your videos? Okay, so the first thing about videos is don't be too complicated about it. I can tell you that there have been videos where I wanted to have like a graphic appear and fly in or twist or do something that seemed like it wasn't going to be difficult. And then I spent 3 hours trying to animate it, and it was not a good use of my time. So don't make them overly complicated. I like to just record sometimes on Zoom. So, I display my PowerPoint or whatever I have to show, and I record myself there. Another one that's similar to that, if you don't want to use Zoom, is Loom. That's one that you can use to capture a screen and then you go down in the corner. You as a little bubble are down there. That one has a free version. I think you can have like 5 videos hosted on their side at a time, and then you have to delete your old ones. When it comes to editing, if you Google for like Android video editors, there's at least 10 different free ones. And if you read some of their reviews, they're pretty similar to each other. I mean, what do you need a video editor to do? Most importantly, you need to be able to remove the beginning and the end of a video, because let's face it, no one starts exactly where they want to be, or you're reaching to turn it on or off. So you can do that in a phone without a program. Just be able to take the beginning and the end, crop that. Next most important skill is, to check your sound level, because sound is more important than video for understanding. If something goes wrong with your video, it doesn't disrupt the comprehension as much as if something goes wrong with the audio. So check your sound, be able to adjust your sound quality, be able to take sound off of a video. Beyond that, to do something like this, what I'm even doing right here, we use StreamYard to broadcast. That can be fun to play with. Just find an app that you like. Do you want transitions? Do you want to be able to float something there? What do you want to be able to do with it? And then use it and just make more. You only get better at videos and faster at videos by making them. All right, let's see. I could talk forever about videos. They're so much fun, and sometimes they are so frustrating. I will tell you the hours I have spent because I got hung up on something. Let's see, homework or home tasks. Well, that is a great vocabulary choice there. I like saying home tasks because then we're kind of normalizing this is an extension of the learning, or it's just as important as what you're doing in class. Students really do need to know that in a flipped classroom. Let's see. What do you think about a flipped class as more work for students and less work for teachers? I don't think it's less work for teachers, at least not the first time you teach it. Now, if you're teaching the same level or the same content multiple times and you can reuse your videos, that can be really helpful. Oh, there's a trick. If you need to record a video on a subject and you're fairly certain you're going to use that same video over and over, don't mention the date. Because if you start out in the video saying, okay, so this video is from Monday, August 23rd, you're not going to be able to use that video again when you teach that class in September. It is always nice to have an introduction sometimes, but you can even do that as a voiceover. You don't want to have to play the game of like pretending you're wearing the same clothes. I wouldn't do that. But save your videos. That'll make it easier. It's not necessarily less work for teachers because you really do have to think it through. It's not more work, but it's very similar, I think. What about feedback for virtual classes? Oh my goodness, we could talk about feedback forever. And I might actually direct you to some of our previous webinars where we have talked about feedback, whether we're talking about writing or speaking. In a flipped classroom, one of the things that's cool about feedback is they're doing that homework or practice live with you. Now, virtually, that means we're in a meeting together. It doesn't mean I can walk around and just glance over their shoulders. I miss doing this. I miss circulating around the room and just checking in with my students. But there are digital equivalents. If I have them in breakout rooms, I go and I visit them, or, we do check-ins. The fact that they're doing their practice there, I think makes feedback a little bit easier because you can see it in progress. You aren't necessarily waiting for them to submit something that they did at home, and then you have to look at it, and then you have to get it back to them. Feedback in general, have a plan. But I do like how feedback and flipped classrooms can go together. Oh, Matilda's saying that flipped classrooms may not be well understood. I agree. There are a lot of misconceptions about it, but there are also a lot of resources about it. So we're going to be sharing on the RELO Andy's Facebook page a couple of links over the next couple of days. This you can always rewatch, but there was also a webinar about 8 months ago that talked about flipped classrooms, and I want to make sure we put that one up because that's talking about how you use flipped classrooms for differentiation and how flipped classrooms can really build autonomy. So it's a different approach. We were here to talk about homework, but there's so much more you can learn about flipped classrooms. All right. So I want to highlight one more comment here. We had one from someone who's been teaching online for 6 years. Oh, it is always great to have some of this input from teachers who are experienced at this. The main challenge is to make students understand the importance on working on the content before coming to class. Exactly. Okay, so what are some ideas to engage students and encourage them to invest more in their learning process? I really like to have students have activities. You need to come knowing something. And that's tricky because you don't want to put students on the spot if they didn't do the homework, but you want to kind of nudge them along. So maybe a group activity where the small group really benefits from people having done that before they came in. So maybe you assign, a video or a reading. They need to make or use that right away when class starts in a small group so that they can kind of support people who didn't do the homework. And then they share with the whole class. And just conversations there. I think it depends on who your learners are and what their goals are for English. There's so many different motivations, but we could talk about that for a long time because you're right there, especially if they're in the habit of just showing up for class. There's that, oh no, I didn't do it moment, and you don't want that to happen too many times in a semester. All right, I think we're going to kind of wrap up our questions for now. I wanted to bring this back up one more time. I mentioned it at the start of the broadcast, but in case you weren't here, I want to announce, remind, I think we've hinted at it before, but as of today, you can get your tickets. So please come to the Re-Evolution ELT conference October 1st through 3rd. It's fully online. It is fully free. But that is the website, and we have the tickets up as of, I think, like a half hour ago. You are the first people to know this. So how many people will I see there? Have you registered yet? Okay, you probably haven't registered while you were watching me, or maybe you're, on 2 devices, 2 screens. But please go register. I would love to know that you're coming. Let me know that you'll be there. And if you want to talk more about this, there were so many great suggestions and ideas in here. We do hold a post-webinar discussion group that'll be happening tomorrow. Visit the RELO Andy's Facebook page to sign up. I'll send you a Zoom link tomorrow morning, and I hope we can keep talking about this. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you at next month's webinar. Take care, everyone.